Jesus is a really good shepherd. He cares for us, and he is kind, and he is generous. This song speaks about that. I hope that you'll engage with it and that you will receive it well. In the process, in the waiting, you're making melodies over me. And your presence is a promise, for I am a pilgrim on a journey. You will lift my head above the mighty waves. You are able to keep me from stumbling. And in my weakness, you are the strength that comes from within. Good shepherd of my soul, take my hand and lead me on. You make my footsteps and my path secure. Walking on water is just the beginning. Cause my faith to rise, stand at attention, for you are calling me to greater things. And you will lift my head above the mighty waves. You are able to keep me from stumbling. And in my weakness, you are the strength that comes from within. Good shepherd of my soul, take my hand and lead me on. You have not forsaken me. Oh, how I love you, how I love you. With you is where I want to be. Oh, how I love you, how I love you. You have not forsaken me. Oh, how I love you, how I love you. With you is where I want to be. For you lift my head above the mighty waves. You are able to keep me from stumbling. And in my weakness, you are the strength that comes from within. Good shepherd of my soul, take my hand and lead me on.
Have you ever noticed in Australian culture and in many cultures around the world, when we're telling someone about a person that they haven't yet met, typically at some point we'll use a phrase that we think adequately sums up the type of person they are. So let me give you some examples, and just for fun, I've chosen the more familiar Aussie slang sayings that tend to float around. He's a top bloke. And if you didn't know, the Urban Dictionary even has a definition of a top bloke. It's an Australian compliment regarding a male who's the type of fellow that everyone wants to hang out with and have a beer with. Also a reliable, helpful, good-natured friend. So if you've ever been called a top bloke, congratulations, you're a good guy. A slightly different demographic might say they're the kind of person who goes above and beyond, or a really good mate, an absolute legend, or a total sweetheart, or they'd give you the shirt off their back. Now, these are, of course, some of the complimentary phrases, and we're not going to go into the ones that describe the people who, for whatever reason, we don't prefer or commend to others, but I'm sure those sayings probably spring to mind too. What's interesting to notice in all of these comments, whether they be compliments or insults, is that they're basically a soundbite snapshot of our assessment of that person's character. It seems to be a natural inclination to us, as in humans engaging in relationship with each other, is that we want to know about the quality of a person's character. And whether we realise it or not, so often we naturally give our referrals based upon our assessment of their character. Funnily enough, have you ever noticed that we don't approach it in the same way when we introduce ourselves? I can't recall ever having someone shake my hand and I've introduced myself saying, "Hi, I'm Shell. I'm the kind of person who goes above and beyond." Or I've shaken Tom's hand and have him go, "Hi, I'm Tom. I'm a top bloke." It would be really quite weird, wouldn't it? It'd just be really strange. And to be honest, we'd probably make a really quick character assessment and conclude that Tom and Shell are a bit full of themselves. So I'm not surprised when I think of it that, the guys who were listening to Jesus when he introduced himself in that passage we just saw from John 10:10 had their feathers ruffled, so to speak, when he says, "Hi, I'm Jesus and I'm a good shepherd." I'm the good shepherd. And he goes further and he says the good shepherd sacrifices his life for his sheep. I'm the good shepherd, he says in John 14, verse 14, I know my own sheep and they know me just as my Father knows me, and I know the Father. So I sacrifice my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep too that are not in the sheepfold, and I must bring them in also. And they will listen to my voice, and there will be one flock with one shepherd. So here he is saying, I'm the good shepherd, the one shepherd, and I'll be the leader of one flock. So just to give you a little bit of background before we unpack this, Jesus makes 7 I am statements that are recorded in the book of John. And all of them reveal something about who he is as God's son and what the kingdom of God is like, and how Jesus has come to rescue everyone who chooses to receive his rescue. This was a big deal for the religious leaders because they were pretty exclusive and thought that God's plan should prioritise the Jewish people as the chosen people. So it was a really radical concept that God's offer of rescue was being extended beyond cultures and ethnicities and every other boundary that had been known. And for a man standing before them to claim to be the Messiah, to be God's son, well, that was incomprehensible because they'd been waiting for so long. So it was a bit offensive. Who did he think he was? He was speaking out of school. Yet in the midst of all the other I ams, there's something particular about this I am statement that I'd like for us to look at today, because it speaks to us at a deeper relational level. And we know from how we do life that we want to know the information about who a person is, about how they relate. We want to know a bit about whether they can be relied upon before we engage with them. Maybe Jesus knew that about us. He had, after all, walked the earth for a bit over 30 years by the time he started talking to people about who he was. He got what life was. He knew about it. He was human after all. So Jesus introduces himself in this way with a description of his character. Hi, I'm Jesus. I'm the Good Shepherd. Well, just a heads up, back in the day, to the people he was talking to, that statement probably would have made a lot more sense to a broader group of the population than it does now. My experience with sheep extends to watching a few too many episodes of Shaun the Sheep on ABC Kids with little ones, a few visits to a family farm that had sheep on the Great Ocean Road when I was a kid, and the odd petting zoo. So when I think of a shepherd, what tends to spring to mind is that typical Christmas image of a guy in a cloak with a large walking stick as tall as him, standing idly in a field surrounded by sheep looking at the sky. Somehow I'm not sure that's what Jesus meant when he said, I'm the Good Shepherd, some stargazer standing in a field. I think to understand the role of a shepherd, first of all, we need to understand a bit about sheep and their relationship to each other and the shepherd. So here's a quick sheep 101, if you like. Sheep are flock animals. They feel safest when they're in a group. But they're also followers, and they're a bit stupid. They'll follow one another, even if it's a bad idea or into danger. They can be led away by buckets of food. Sheep were entirely dependent upon shepherds to keep them safe from predators and also to lead them to places of food and water. And something that I've learned is that sheep can't protect their own ears from insects and lice and flies that burrow into the wool. If they get into the sheep's ears, it kills the sheep. So when you hear about a shepherd anointing a sheep's head with oil, it was a practice which prevented the bugs from being able to attach to the sheep and actually saved their lives. I don't know about you, but when I think about those attributes of sheep, I understand more fully the words of Isaiah 53 verse 6, when it says, all of us like sheep have strayed away. We've left God's paths to follow our own paths. How easy it can be to be just like sheep and follow the crowd. Even if we know it's a bad idea or it leads to danger. Maybe you've felt the danger of following the crowd off God's path, away from his plan for your life, away from his truth. And you've gone with the crowd straight into things like living as though your value and your worth is based on your performance and your behaviour. You've believed the story of the crowd, that seeing is believing and that faith is foolish. You've believed the narrative that the crowd has dictated to you about your priorities or your finances or your time or your relationships. Maybe being swept up by the crowd mentality isn't so much of an issue for you, but there are some things in your life that are just like that bucket of food for a sheep. The things that have the power to lure you away from the safety of life as God intended it to be, to take you away from your flock. We all have them. Clearly, I'm a bit too easily lured by caramel marble blocks of chocolate at the moment. My body's paying the toll as it rapidly grows in response. You know, in the verse right before Jesus says, I'm the Good Shepherd, he talks about the thief who comes to steal and to kill and to destroy. The reality is, friends, there's an enemy of our souls who knows exactly what he can put in front of us to lure us away from life. And his sole intent is our destruction. Sometimes it's subtle, and sometimes it's as obvious as if I've taken a sledgehammer to your living room. Maybe he lures you away from peace by enticing you into worry and insecurity. Maybe he lures you away from experiencing the fullness of God's love by getting you to grab onto hold of stories of shame and condemnation and feelings of inadequacy. Maybe he lures you away from relationship and intimacy with others by dangling that carrot of independence and selfishness. You know, we all have different stories. We all have different things that seek to draw us away from life. But we all have things. As Isaiah said, we all, like sheep, have gone astray. We've all left God's path to follow our own paths. But the beauty of that passage is that it doesn't end there. The very next verse says, yet the Lord laid on him the sins of us all. God made a way. God gave us a rescuer. Or as Jesus says in this passage in John 10, I am the good shepherd. I know my sheep and they know me. Just as my Father knows me and I know the Father, so I sacrifice my life for the sheep. What kind of shepherd is Jesus? He's a good one. He's the kind of shepherd who doesn't give up on the sheep that goes the wrong way. He doesn't leave them for dead. He doesn't put them in the too hard basket. He gives his all. He gives himself. His character isn't like ours. His character is inherently good in every way. For every time I follow the crowd, he gives himself. For every stupid decision I make, he gives himself. For every brokenness, he gives himself. For everything that I feel like I'm stuck in and feel like I can never get out of, he gives himself. I don't know your story, but I know my own. And I know there have been times where people have said to me, well, if God is so good, why did that baby have to die? Or why did that terrible thing have to happen? And if I'm honest, there's been times when my heart has really wrestled with the same question. And while I now think that I've realised the answer to a lot of these questions, tonight we're not going to talk about the why. But just as we're closing, we're going to focus on the who. Because his character isn't like ours. We look to blame. And we look to blame him because we're so used to having a suitably blameworthy character. The reality is we live in a really broken world where really hard stuff happens this side of heaven. People make choices that we live with, and we live with the consequences of the things that hurt us deeply. Our world is broken for a lot of reasons. There's pandemics, there's mass incidents, people die prematurely, and it breaks our hearts. There are things that are breaking your heart. There are so many different kinds of things that bring us pain in this world because there's a thief and he's always there for steal and kill and destroy. But the story doesn't end there. Even in the midst of pain. Let me introduce you to my friend Jesus, the Good Shepherd. These last few years, I've walked quite a complex grief journey as someone I care very much about has been missing in tragic circumstances. It would be fair to say that there are days when my heart has felt lured into hopelessness and despair. In the absence of the perpetrator to blame, I've wanted to blame someone, and I've wanted to blame Jesus for a lack of answers. But as I've walked intimately with the family of the loved one through the darkness, I've wondered how sometimes life can possibly just keep going. And the words of the thief would come and say, if Jesus is so good, surely he would bring an end to this. Let this person be found. Why would Jesus let this happen? And on and on and on. And you've probably got similar kinds of stories that you've heard. But you know, in the midst of this dark place, I've experienced him in new and deep ways. His character, his goodness, even in the depths of pain. Psalm 23 has become real in a whole new way. The Lord is my shepherd. What kind of shepherd? Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me. Your rod and your staff protect me. You prepare a feast for me in the presence of my enemies. You honour me by anointing my head with oil. Surely your goodness and unfailing love will pursue me all the days of my life. You know, in the darkest valley, he doesn't bail. He's right there. And I believe that there are those of you who need to be reminded today that wherever your life has taken you, it's never taken you outside the reach of Jesus. There's no place that's too dark. He's right there. He's the Good Shepherd. He goes after you. He fights for you. He pursues you. Even when all around you looks like death and darkness, you can know the full provision in the richness of his presence. If we're feeling trapped by the things we battle with, the seen or the unseen things, there's nothing that's too much for Jesus. Remember what it said in Isaiah, yet the Lord laid on him the sins of us all. The price has already been paid. Our rescue has already been secured. We just need to claim it and thank him for it. I think for others of us today, it's about taking the time to lift our eyes from the crowd we're following and resetting our focus on Jesus. He's the only one who's willing to put his life on the line for us. The one who sees us no matter which path we're on and looks at us with kindness and says, hey, remember me? I'm Jesus. I'm your good shepherd. I'm the one who fights for you, who pursues you, who longs to meet your needs, who follows after you with goodness and mercy and love all the days of your life. So I wonder tonight in these next few minutes, if you'll take this time to be with my friend Jesus. Don't just trust my word about his character, encounter it for yourself. So let me introduce you. Meet my friend, Jesus. He's a good shepherd.
You were patient, you were kind, you go before us, you come behind, you were with me, even when I fall, you surround me, you were with me through it all. You promise life, you bring hope in the darkness. You are with me where I go, you surround me, fight my battles, you lift me when I'm in the shadows. Oh, you are good, Lord. You're a good shepherd, my good shepherd. Mm.